Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Float, Odyssey, Telegram, Twitch, TikTok, and the Prepper Broadcast Network. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim, and today is November 3rd, 2022, and this is episode 196 of the Workshop Podcast. Today is going to be a pre-recorded episode that I did last evening. We'll talk about that in a minute, but real quick, let's get the announcements out of the way. Number one, Patch of the Month Club. This month's patches should be landing any day, so they will be going out soon. So if you'd like to get in on this month's new patch that I will not unveil until somebody shows it on social media, run by patchofthemonth.co. Go by there. It's $10 a month, $100 a year. You can sign up with crypto. You can send me silver. Or you can sign up with PayPal and support the workshop, get a cool product, and also get put on a super secret email list about first arrival of products, discounts, that sort of thing. Number two, this one's really exciting. I could now officially announce my first podcast sponsor. My brother from another mother, Joel Riles from Fortress K9. We've had this in the works for a while. He just got me his 30-second ad spot. I am excited. So once a week, haven't decided which day yet, you guys will hear from Joel about why you should check out his podcast, from Fortress K9, which I am so excited. It's the Protection Dog podcast. Joel is a great guy, salt of the earth, who has rebuilt his life from scratch in just a few years, doing better than he ever did. So give Joel some love and look out for his ad coming up next week. And finally, guys, this one's kind of a sad announcement, but I'm not going to be, it's bittersweet. I'm not going to be attending the TSP Fall Workshop after all this year. And I was absolutely looking forward to it. It was one of them bittersweet things because I had to cancel because I just picked up a metric shit ton of new snow clients that basically doubled my monthly income. I couldn't turn it down, but I had to be here. So if anybody was out there looking forward to chatting or hanging out at the workshop, I apologize. I will give you a rain check. I'm going to take a rain check because I got to be there at some point. But I will make it up to you. We will all connect at some point, and I apologize, guys. Finally, today's tool. If you didn't know these things existed, you need to check them out. If you guys know, I've been collecting up some Harbor Freight Bauer cordless tools. And of course, I can't just go to my local Harbor Freight here in Canada and pick up more batteries because, well, we don't have any. So I picked up the Bauer to dewalt adapter. What it does is it slides onto the bottom of a Bauer tool and it allows you to put a dewalt battery to power them. And it works great. If you didn't know those existed, pick one up. They're like $25 on Amazon right around. Links in the description below. Okay, so today's episode, which was actually last evening's episode, was 100% from the power of community. The first time I had John Willis on my show, at the end, he said, Tim, you need to meet my buddy Ed. And I said, well, who's Ed? And he said, Ed from Iridium Solutions. He's a fellow Canuck. You guys need to make contacts. John is so good like that. So I reached out to Ed, and we finally got him on the show. Ed is a salt of the earth. He knows everything. He knows stuff about nuclear, biological. He knows metalsmithing. He knows first aid, preparedness, tactical, all of that. So anyway, once I mentioned to a couple of people, oh, Ed's coming on. Well, then Chuck Peoples mentions, oh, man, you are going to love his interview. And then the guys from Tactical Response are like, oh, yeah, we know Ed. So Ed comes highly recommended. This conversation went all over the place. We had a great time just getting to know each other. He will definitely be back on the show, and I'm working really hard to try to maybe get him to come here to my event at some point. But anyway, enough for me. Check out the great conversation I had with Ed from Iridium Solutions now. I got a pretty cool guest tonight, guys. It is Ed, a fellow Canuck from the Iridium Group. How are you, bud?
I'm doing well. Good evening.
Good evening. So where in Canuckistan are you?
Northern British Columbia.
How
specifically
northern?
Prince George. So if you look where you're at to the west, and you get in a vehicle and just start driving west for about 8 hours, you'd run into where I'm at.
If come through Edson and what's the next national park up there? Jasper.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the time you hit Edmonton, and you're on Highway 16, you have about 3 left turns to go to get to my house by the time you get to Prince George. It's just straight.
I've lived in Alberta. It'll be 9 years in January, and I have yet to be to BC. It's the craziest thing. I was at Lake Louise twice and never quite made it.
Yep. And I mean, I've been here all my life, and I love it here. I've been around the world and have a hard time comparing. Chuck Peoples, good evening, sir.
I had to bring him up.
I have a hard time comparing the other parts of the world that I've seen to to not find something that I can also find in BC. So I love it here. I like going other places for a little while, but I always come back here. I've never thought about relocating somewhere else just because it was nicer.
I like how you qualified that, just because it's nicer. Yes.
There's other reasons, and there's other very appropriate reasons, but
yes.
Beauty of the scenery, low population density where I'm at, mountains, forest, moose are everywhere. I love it. It's phenomenal up here.
Do you get much snow?
Yes, although like you have snow right now, we have none.
Oh yeah, we got a foot of snow today.
Yeah.
Now I'm originally from Nova Scotia, so you'll catch that when I talk. When I say out in a boat. So
yeah.
And it's got to the point out there now where, boy, they rarely get snow before Christmas, and it doesn't last. So for the guys, we'll slide back a little bit, but for anybody who doesn't know who Ed is, he comes highly, highly recommended from many friends of the workshop. John Willis from SOE is the first one who turned me on to you. He said, Tim, Ed is a fellow Canadian and you need to know him. And I had seen Iridium on Instagram. I was like, okay. And then I'm at SRF, and of course I got to know Chuck real well in person. Chuck Peoples right there. And he's like, oh, I know Ed. You need to know Ed. And then I'm at Tactical Response, and they're like, oh, a Canadian. Oh, do you know Ed? Apparently, I need to get to know Ed. Funny how you have to go to the States to hear all about us Canadians,
The very small number,
Yes.
I don't know if you drew a Canadian flag on the team room, if you added any, but all the other ones were drawn on there by me. In the bunks. So if you did that thing where you sign on the bunk and you put a little Canadian flag, that'd have been cool. I don't know.
No, I didn't stay in the family room this time, but I'm going to next time. Just
next time, it's worth doing.
You know what? So for those who don't know, we're talking about Tactical Response, and what a fucking incredible experience that place is, and get to know them really well. And I'm definitely going to stay in the team room next time because definitely. Whew. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you, and then we can jump all around. Who is Ed? Where'd you come from? Yeah.
Born the son of a goldsmith. So my dad makes custom jewelry, and that was my first trade. By the time I was 7, I was melting down gold, rolling it out, making bales around nuggets, and my father was selling in the showcase. And so I learned very early on how to work with metals, and not silver, basically just gold. We worked with gold, palladium, and platinum. He's a very, very down-to-earth man who works in very high-end materials and does amazing work, and still to this day. And so I started there, and that took me almost all the way to adulthood, on and off, right? My wife, the jewelry that she has, is the jewelry that I made for her, or that my father made for her. That's how that went. After that, I got into the oil and gas industry, specifically radiography. And in and of itself, it's a technician-based field, but I had some background from when I worked in jewelry and transported very expensive parcels around. I had met some people. I'd learned about personal protection, security, stuff like that. Just considerations when you're transporting thousands and thousands of dollars around, just driving or walking around with it. And that traveled with me to radiation safety world. And I got into the nuclear side of it shortly after the 9/11 attacks.
Okay.
And so you can imagine that security, terrorism, the possibility of dirty bombs was on everyone's mind. And I was roaming around the countryside, with radioactive isotopes all the time in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
Sometimes by myself and sometimes with like one or two other people. And that prompted me to learn about security as it pertained to nuclear threats, personal threats, terrorists, and stuff like that. And that's been a really like a long, sort of convoluted journey where I've met lots of people. I've had the opportunity to be in a bunch of different places and meet lots of people that the public doesn't get to meet and learn from them. And as that evolved, forward in time, the path, the sort of the training path, the path to preparedness, it doesn't end. There's never like, hey, we're good, I'm done, I can just sort of sleep on my laurels. It's continuous, and there's I mean, there's always more to learn, like the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? You learn a little bit, you think you're an expert, and then you learn a lot more, and you're like, oh shit, there's a lot more to learn. And then you become, some level of expert or mastery of a thing. You're like, yeah, the only thing I can tell you is it depends. That's the only answer to just about everything. And I have way more to learn. So it's like that with me for everything. And so it's sort of morphed into, I've done training and consultation in security, preparedness, nuclear security and preparedness, radiation protection, I've tactical stuff, and then I've recently moved heavily into the training civilians on medical stuff because we don't really have anyone up here doing that.
Yes.
We've already talked about TAC response, and you've been there, I've been there, and you know that the mindset and methodology of tactical response is different than just about anywhere else.
Yes.
And it's not accepted in a lot of places in America, which is, full of people that purport to be about the sort of tactical training. It's even less sort of acceptable up here for the Canadians who, like to buy guns, get a bunch of this gear, and then do that same thing where they're like, I'm set. What? Doesn't matter. Red Dawn, good to go. I got a bunch of SKSs. Don't need to train. Training? Yeah, cool. We're going to go to the woods. We're going to, shoot at some targets. I'm happy, drink a few beers. So it's not like I can bring the tactical response mindset to Canadians. I find people who either have it or don't, and that's fine. It's narrow casting there. But teaching people, especially like Canadian civilians, how to be ready to save other people rather than just stand there, be bystanders who only have one recourse, and that's whip out a cell phone. It's a big deal. And there aren't a lot of places going much beyond the sort of stop the bleed program for civilians. Now, Tactical Emergency Casualty Care, or TECC, which is what I teach, is readily available for law enforcement, EMS, and security agencies, but not a lot of regular people are getting it yet. That's set to change. And so looking at it this year, I thought, well, you know what? Like I've sent, I don't know, between tens and $100,000 worth of medical equipment over to Ukraine. Not that I paid for, that was purchased and that I, helped funnel through. And it didn't help anybody here. Right? Not that people over there didn't need it, although there's conflicting reports about that entire conflict.
Sure.
But in sort of looking inside and conversations upstairs, it came to me that what I really need to do is make it so that the average person has the ability to access something where they can learn how to, save their own life or someone else's in a Canadian way, because we don't have guns. Right. Like we're not, we ain't walking around strapped. We don't have no smoke wagons on our hips or whatever euphemisms you want to learn. So, you or me are more likely to respond to a car crash,
right,
or a motorcycle incident, or a boating accident, or a chainsaw accident, or something out of doors, because we have a low population density and lots of outdoor recreation activities that happen year round. And so I created a course that focused less on gunshot wounds and how to deal with them, although that's in there, and more on what Canadians can expect from, statistically speaking.
Right.
So that brings us up to today. And yeah, I went public early this year with Iridium Solutions. It's the Iridium Group on Instagram, but everywhere else on the internet, it's Iridium Solutions, right? iridiumsolutions.ca. Because it does many things. I still consult for the oil field. I'm a licensed security professional. I still hold all of my inspection tickets, and then now we do. Oh, and I'm a provincially designated firearms instructor, so I teach the Canadian firearm safety courses. So it's a handful. It's probably more than one person can handle. But there was only one way to make it a lot more public than I was, and that was to have the business and sell the things and teach the people. So that's one of the reasons we're talking. John, I've known John in real life for a number of years, since 2017. I've ran John's gear since 2012. There's a micro rig right there behind me. Yep, that I bought. I've had that thing for almost a decade now. And he was one of the ones that pushed me and said, yeah, you do all this stuff behind the scenes, but you should probably monetize this and actually make it your real thing, right? And I'm I'm not the only one that has that story when it comes to John Willis. Nope. And people will have their dissenting opinions about him and his character, and I'm fine with that. I had one guy hit me up on Instagram, chatting the DMs. You want this medical thing and that medical thing, and I suggested John's new ankle first aid kit might be a good choice. He said, "Well, I don't like that guy. I'm an ass, or he's an asshole." And I said, "I have news for you. He's my friend, and I'm an asshole too."
Yeah, right.
So it's like that. So. No, it's not that John funded me in business or anything. He just said, as a friend, you need to be doing this so that you can reach more people, and I agree.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Let's start with, you're a Canadian, I'm a Canadian, and I get this question a ton because obviously I'm a prepper. I talk about prepping all the time. I talk about all of that, and I liked how you talked about the the most likely thing to happen. Now, people always ask, aren't you scared about talking about this shit online or with people? They're like, does it feel, what do you think about that? Does it because yes, we put ourselves out there a little bit, but and we live in a different country than most of our audience, right? What do you think? Are you worried?
Sin. Fear is a sin.
Yes.
I have concerns. I have legitimate security concerns, and I comport myself such that those aren't compromised when I'm on the internet. You're like, my kids are not going to be running back here, and you're not going to see their faces, and so on and so forth. And am I concerned about people thinking that I'm a prepper? Go look at my website, homie. I mean, people already think I'm a crazy prepper. The ones who want to are like, man, that dude is dressed up in a bunch of different things. He's got gas masks, he's got guns, he's got lasers, he's got thermal, he's got all this stuff. Crazy prepper.
Yes.
Well, okay. But, we all know the guy who's got that Canadian and then that other word beside him, who spends all of his time on the internet telling us how the world is going to end tomorrow. And the worst thing, we know who that guy is.
You feel the same way I do. I understand. Yeah.
I think everybody who's serious about preparedness and self-reliance feels that way. And it's like the first video that I ever saw of his was cool. All right. he does a good job. It's very engaging. It's not what I'm about. I don't want people to be afraid. Fear and anger are the two emotional ways that you could be led around by the nose. The easiest. Right. If you are angry or you are scared or terrified, then whoever created that in you owns you.
Yes. I say all the time that fear is an incredible short-term motivator. A lot of people come to prepping because of Y2K, 2012, 9, whatever it happened, doesn't matter, right? Everybody comes to that, but you can't stay there because it's going to wreck you. But like you said, anybody out there who can, kind of pull the strings on you is going to get you. Like you said, because you're out of control when you're fearful or when you're angry, you just want to solve the problem, and you're like, take my money, do whatever, right?
Yep. Look, they want either your money, which is an expression of your time, or they want your attention, which is an expression of your time. And your time is finite, and it's the commodity you have that you bring to everything. And if you are just handing it away to somebody, it isn't being of value to you. It's probably not being of value to them, frankly. And so in the preparedness space, if you're coming about it from a vector of fear, and I add anger in there because, on the sort of right side of the political spectrum, it's really easy to look over at the left and some of the bullshit that they get after and be like, just look at it and just be stewing, just be angry, just be mad. The truth is, chaos, capital C, chaos, doesn't care what side we fight on. It only cares that we fight each other. And the best thing that we can do to combat that isn't to fight chaos, it's to not fight each other.
100%. So as a Canadian, we recently had a new law passed that, and of course, what do I get? I get, 4 or 5 well-meaning Americans message me, oh, what are you going to do? They're more angry than I am. And am I angry? Sure, whatever, And then I was on live stream with John and Nicole I think it was John, or maybe it was John on Sunday night. Anyway, we were talking about it. And, they wanted to know, is it true? I'm like, yeah, what can I do about it? It doesn't affect the temperature of my, in my pool or my hot tub, right?
Of your swimming pool. Yeah. Circles of influence, circles of concern. I teach the Canadian restricted firearms course. As of right now, that's actually impacted a portion of my business because there's no point in me teaching that course to people who can't acquire handguns. Except that Gary Johnson. Except that this is maybe temporary. And I mean, let's think about this. Everybody who's seen my online presence or met me in person knows that I'm about a handgun or a rifle or a shotgun. Yeah. I like them. I'm also about people being very dangerous without guns.
Fair enough.
Okay. So like in the end, if everything goes to shit and we don't have guns, if you were looking at the gun that you didn't have as a talisman to protect you, you never got any training.
Right.
And if you got training that focused on you becoming dangerous, and that's I don't mean dangerous as in a danger to people around you, right? I mean dangerous in the sense that you could affect the world around you for positive or ill, and you get to choose to not be a bad person.
Yeah.
But that means that if you need to go kinetic or do tactical shit, then you don't have a gun and you have a hammer and a fire extinguisher. What are you going to do? Are you just going to curl up in a corner? Hell no. Right? And that's mindset. And that's why mindset is more important than gear. Training and no gun beats gun and no training. I have agreed with that statement since the first day James Yeager put it out.
I teach the same thing. Like my shtick is preparedness, is what I call it. So home maintenance and help around the corner, when help's not around the corner. And I say that all the time. I say, skills beat supplies every day of the week, because if you know how to do something, everything's a supply, right? Yep. A bike tire can fix it, or a bike tube can fix a leaky pipe, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have all the supply, you got a whole shit ton of plumbing supplies. If you don't know what to do with them, you might be able to barter with them, Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. If you don't know what to do with them, statistically, you didn't need them.
Sure, because then you're just like all the other preppers who went out.
Well, no, yeah. What you needed was somebody who knew how to use them.
Right, and skills are free to a point. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like
it's time. It's time.
Good point. Yeah, but go ahead.
If you put your time into something where there's value, then it's time well spent.
I will spend a lot of money to free up time for me. Things like I outsource a fair bit of stuff to Fiverr. You ever use Fiverr? Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. And no, so it's Fiverr. And so my logo that's up there at the top of the screen, that was built by a guy on Fiverr. My channel intro, all of that, because I could do it and it would take me 3 days and it would be half as good as what this guy can do in 20 minutes. And I pay him $50 or whatever he's in, overseas somewhere. But
Yep.
I'm a huge fan of, I'll spend money to free up time, because that's the lifestyle I teach here,
Yep. I built every stick of that first website, of my current website.
Sure.
All the words were all written by me. The photos were all taken by me and my guys over here, my friends. I don't own them, but now, but we're splitting it apart, because Iridium Solutions is sort of, people arrive there for one thing and then see a lot of different things, and we're going to funnelize it a little bit. So we're splitting it apart into a couple different websites, and I found a person who understands the stuff on my website enough that he could build the sister websites to it. I had a hard time at the beginning getting the concepts across to the web designers I had hired, because they had no experience. They didn't understand. They thought, they could just grab random photos off the internet for any of the things I was saying. Like, look, here's a photo of a dude with a gun. I'm like, that's got nothing to do with what I'm talking about. And you can't use that. Get it off my website, right? Like these things, there's a purpose to everything that's on there. And there's a purpose to what we're doing. So I found that I spent a month building that first website.
Sure.
No shit. Like, all of the month of December, I was, in front of this computer, and it sucked. I'm much happier, but like, I had tried to outsource it, but the personnel that I hired, they didn't get it. And due to the time and the crunch and all that, I couldn't, change that up. But I've since changed that up. And now, yeah, I'm gonna trade some fiat currency, or maybe some cryptocurrency, whatever we got to make this happen. And somebody who understands what I'm about, and knows the sort of gateposts of where I operate and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, is going to build them and do a really great job. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's cool. So you mentioned crypto. You're into crypto a little?
I know enough to be dangerous. Okay, Dunning-Kruger effect. I'm over here. Yeah,
that's me too.
I'll put it this way. I think if a person buys a little bit of Bitcoin now, that they are just hedging against 10 years from now it being a dominant commodity. I don't know that it'll become a dominant currency. Okay, but even if it's a dominant commodity, it's worthwhile. It has value. And I've lived through enough new things coming about and me not getting on the wagon that it's time to hedge those bets. Not much. I like gold and silver. Like I mentioned, I grew up with, actually melting it down and rolling it out, and like my transition into industrial inspection and professional metallurgy and pressure vessels and sort of all the steel-based stuff that I've done. My knowledge about metallurgy came from knowing how to take a torch, a hammer, and a piece of gold and change its shape by melting it down, learning how the heat went through it, what I had to do to form it and shape it. And so I have a particular fondness for gold in my heart.
That's cool. I do too. I mean, well, obviously not from that same, but just when I first got into prepping, everybody, you need to have gold. You got to buy gold. Well, I was broke as a friggin' joke. So obviously gold wasn't an option, not even a gram of gold at that time. And then, as we built our business and got a little bit better off, I was introduced to the joys of silver, because I always thought, everybody always said, oh, gold's the way to go. And then, Jack started. Do you listen to the Survival Podcast at all?
I know I've not met Jack Spirko, but I know who he is, and I've watched his YouTube shows, and obviously, being friends with John, it's hard to not hear about Jack and not see them do collabs.
Well, I listened to him. I've been listening to him almost a decade now, and so he turned me on to a lot of this preparedness stuff. I came to it as a prepper before, but yeah. So silver, anyway. So the missus and I got into silver because it's a hedge against inflation, if nothing else. And so yeah, it was one of those things. And then you'd find a neat little trinket, and you'd pick that up and you'd buy some ounces of silver. And then one day I finally went in and had a little money in my pocket, and they had some 1 gram wafers of gold. So I was like, all right, I'm starting. So been working toward my first ounce of gold this year, which has been a big thing. So,
okay. So, and you're talking about physical gold. So you're not talking about investing in gold stocks. You're talking about buying and holding
Oh,
metal.
100, yes, physical every day of the week.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I have some gold and some silver that I keep on hand, and it feels good. It feels like the thing that a person should do.
It does. It's something tangible too, and of course Jack, I bring up a lot of things I learned from him over the years, but I mean he always said 5 to 10% of your net wealth in precious metals. There's a lot of Alex Jones types out there that might tell you, sell it all and put it, whatever it is, or maybe our Canadian buddy or whatever, but they'll tell you to buy all the gold you can, and I don't know. Anyway, that's where I'm at. I like to have a little bit. Do I think that I'm going to be Mad Max and use it as a post-apocalyptic currency? Well, I don't know, but I do like having it. It, like you said, it gives you a little bit of peace of mind.
Well, there are 3 other precious metals, and they as the world gets really squirrely, they become more prevalent, and that of course would be copper, brass, and lead.
Yes, I was kind of hoping you were going that direction. So
Yeah,
yeah,
those are good. I wouldn't hold stocks in those. I'd prefer to hold crates of those in pallets.
When you talked about gold certificates or paper gold, since you brought it up, why wouldn't a person want to invest in that?
If you are a trader who's working in markets, who makes their money based on the volatility of the markets, if that's what you do, then there's no reason why not. Gold's volatile. Gold moves. But the idea of holding a precious metal physically is about barter when the electronic digital fiat system collapses. And so if you're hedging against that emergency, then having gold stock is kind of a moot point. Wouldn't matter if you had stock in coffee or pork rinds or anything at that point, because if you can't get the electrons to connect to the other electrons that connect to the bank electrons that allow you to buy a Subway, then there's no point, right? It doesn't matter. And at that point, you need to be able to go ahead and find something and I don't want to trade this mug for a bun, so why don't I trade some currency?
No, that's true. A lot of my American friends talk about how concerned they are about the digital dollar and things like that, since we were talking about cryptocurrency. And I think, at least as a Canadian, for about 20 years, we've pretty much had a digital dollar. We obviously still have paper money here, but things have been a majority digital for a long time.
I think everywhere.
Yeah.
And just because we've had it longer than them, this Canada is we used to say it was communist light or socialist light.
Excuse me.
And in the not too distant past, we said stuff like that, right? But so it's not the same place. It's very obviously not the same structure as America. But I think a lot of places around the world are running a digital currency, and obviously there's an impetus globally to have something where time and economic production can be valued by one single metric. In the last 70 or 80 years, or maybe 60, that's been the U.S. dollar, and all things run their course. There's no permanence for anything anywhere. And if I can bring it back around to talking, we were talking about, even if we didn't have handguns and the world collapses and whatever, and it's better to be dangerous with anything. The same sort of applies to this talk about globalism and digital dollars, and that it's like there's a point to preparedness where you get to continue what you consider to be normalcy. Right? You get to just perpetuate normalcy for the people around you, the people you care about anyways, for as long as possible, because of preparedness. And so as you go down a self-reliance journey, I think there's a sort of natural evolution into going, globalism, whatever, I don't care. I'm just going to keep doing the things that I was doing yesterday, right? I'm going to do the things that I want to do tomorrow. because I don't even play that game. And I think that's probably the healthiest response. Circling back to capital C chaos, doesn't care what side we fight for, just that we fight each other. Yeah. The best thing to do is to not opt out of life, not opt out of dealing with people. It's to put yourself in a position to help the people you can see, smell, taste, touch, feel, and hear, the people around you. It's a real grassroots sort of concept. But when you're doing that, I don't check the news to see how, fiat currency is going. I don't care. And yeah, I know that our currency, our inflation rates are somewhat dramatic. You could even say ridiculous. I also know that the people who tend to do the best in situations like that are the ones who don't let it lead them around by the nose.
Yes.
You've only got so much time and capacity for focusing on things in a given day. And if half your brain energy is spent worrying about this shit in the background while you're going about your day, how could you possibly be productive? How could you spin up a side business? How could you network with other people? How could you do things that bring additional value to you or the people around you? You can't. And you could say that that's almost by design if you wanted to. Be like, if we just keep those people running around to try to pay ends meet and so discombobulated that they can't ever branch out, do cool shit, do the shit they really want to do, grow businesses, interact and help others, find people with ideological alignment and create more unity. If we can keep them from doing that, then we could just make them hate each other and just pull these puppet strings, and then we own everything. And I see that, and I try to put out a message that is counter to that whenever possible. And I understand. Greetings. I understand that, like, I sell gas masks and nuclear emergency preparedness stuff, and that some people might think that the two can't coincide. I think they can.
Absolutely, they can, man. I'm going to say it now, but I really hope that just because Canadian is in the title of this episode, that my American brothers listen to this, because we'll have to have you back, Ed. You are my type of guy, dude. This is great, because I cannot stand. Okay, for starters, I stopped voting a few years ago, and I'm an anarchist, an anarcho-capitalist, and whatever, So I really, really, really try not to spend any headspace on that kind of shit. So for the last almost 6 years now, my wife and I have been on the entrepreneurial journey, building multiple businesses, and we are in a really good spot. And when all the bullshit took place over the last 2.5 years, didn't affect us a whole hell of a lot. My wife runs a daycare, so there were some things that it did. Did not affect me one bit.
Yeah, you went through a lot of hand sanitizer and had to suddenly find 10,000 N95 masks, I presume.
Correct.
Figure out how to make that happen. Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story afterwards, when we're done here. I just want to shout out to my buddy from New Jersey. Just sent me a care package in the mail. We both met at Tactical Response and then hung out at Self-Reliance Festival afterwards. So
another alumni, right on.
And here's another brother of mine from Alberta, Chris Dixon. He is also a metal worker, and he's been up here and hung out with me. So
very cool.
Let's slide back to your first aid, Ed, because for me, one of the things I've been looking for a while has been something above and beyond just the St. John ambulance or the Red Cross. Every 2 years, learn how to run a defibrillator. You know what I mean?
Sure,
I want some balls to the wall, practical kind of first aid, and sounds like maybe you offer that.
Yeah, I'm the guy for that. Now there's sort of two branches. So your traditional standard first aid is still really important. What trauma medicine is about is the first 3 minutes, the first 5 minutes, and the first 10 minutes after an injury, after a traumatic injury, right? The trauma medicine paradigm doesn't really address heart attack or cardiac arrest, but it's really well covered in our standard first aid courses, right? So the Red Cross has got that covered, and I think that's still really valuable. Also, in your standard first aid, you learn how to do a tin chin tilt jaw thrust, right, to open an airway.
Yeah.
And you learn how to roll someone over into the recovery position so they can, vomit or sleep without their tongue slipping back and suffocating. These are really important skills, and we do those skills in civilian trauma medicine as well. What we cover is massive bleeding. So you have either an amputation or a cut or damage to a point where you have an arterial bleed.
Okay.
And the reason that's of primary concern is if you do have an open artery, the average adult can bleed out in under a minute and a half.
It's crazy.
And by bleed out, what I mean is you can lose 40% of your body's blood volume. Okay. You can, and it could be 3 minutes too. The statistics aren't set because it depends on the injury. It depends. You could have a little nick to the artery. You could have, a bunch of arterial bleeds in a bunch of places. What it is if you lose 40% of your body's blood volume, you go into what's known as stage 4 shock. And in that stage 4 shock, your organs start to shut down. And even if we get you to a hospital really quickly and otherwise, yep, it is fast, and otherwise resuscitate you, there's a high statistical probability that a few weeks down the road, you'll die because your organs couldn't be brought back. Because when the body's like, hey, we're done, just boop, 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 start shutting down organs, that's not a process that can really be reversed in sort of standard hospital care. There's obviously all these things, there's a little it depends factor, but sure. The reason that we focus on massive bleeding first is because it is the best way to save somebody from the thing that'll kill them the fastest. What a mindset thing that I teach in my course is we have to address what's killing my casualty now and work to fix it, right? Because if they've got a great big head wound and there's blood gushing out of it, and they've got a broken leg and their leg is, sort of sideways and they're all mangled and, their left arm is crushed under something and in their right arm, there's an arterial bleed and it's squirting out. If we do anything other than deal with that, and by that, I mean tourniquet high and tight to stop the arterial bleed, if we address any of the other stuff first and miss this, then that person has a high likelihood of expiring. So we have to find the thing that's going to kill them now and fix that first. And then after that, circle back around to the next thing that's going to kill them.
Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to, how do I know it's arterial bleeding?
If it is spurting, okay. So one quick way to recognize it is if it is pumping out. And if it's pumping out, what's happening is every time the heart pumps, like beats a beat, blood comes out of them. So then it's arterial bleeding. If there's no more blood spurting out and it's just leaking out, then you start looking at how much blood is around it. And if you walk up to that and go, well, that is a lot of blood, then you are safest to assume that it is massive hemorrhage until you've proven otherwise. And you can spend a minute doing a full body, sort of search and really carefully searching to determine what that injury is. Or you can treat it as if it's massive bleeding, but then circle right around, figure out exactly what it was and whether or not you needed to put a tourniquet on. Okay, Chuck knows. Chuck's been a paramedic for a very long time, and Chuck teaches this stuff too.
Said patient assessment is the absolute key to success.
Yep.
And Smart Ad 2010 is asking onboard tourniquet. I'm wondering if you have an EDC tourniquet that you prefer. That's the man. Right? I'm not even wearing my knife. I feel naked. So look at that.
Cat Gen 7. Okay.
What was it? Sorry.
So this is North American Rescue Cat Generation 7.
Okay.
Don't buy it if it's $10. In Canada, it should be about $43, $44 right now. Okay. In America, it should be somewhere around $30. If it's less, it's a fake. I've done videos breaking them on camera. The $9 or $10 fakes. It ain't worth it. And it's sad that I have to say this is the one to get and don't buy a fake, but they're out there. And then because I carry 2 tourniquets, and in this ankle IFAC, there's a soft key. wide. And yes, it's blue, and blue is generally a training color, but I don't care. A tourniquet's a tourniquet. So a couple of the recommended ones are the Cat Gen 7 and the Softy. Okay, so these are if you're looking for two good ones, yeah, those are them.
And yeah, go ahead.
No,
Just going to Chekc also said, with the decline of healthcare in the States, with the continuing shortage of healthcare workers, modern healthcare will not be as readily available per the past. He said, go train with Ed or train with me.
Right. And so we were talking about training being the key. So skills, what did you say about skills?
Yeah, for me, skills supersede supplies every day of the week.
So when I train, when I teach my class, and if you go look at the sort of tactical medicine, anything in the tactical medicine sphere, all the tactical medical equipment, and there's a compact chest seal here, and we've got one of these fancy compressed gauzes. I teach people what these things are, and then I teach you how to use the hospital versions of them. So ACE bandages and non-compressed gauze and just regular shit. Because the truth is, the other supply chain that is completely messed up right now is the old tactical medicine supply chain, because it's all being sent over for conflicts.
Oh, sure.
And so it wouldn't do me any good to teach you all the TCCC, cool, super awesome pressure bandages if you can't get them.
Right.
So I'm teaching people to use the same things that are on board the ambulance or in the hospital. And it's I've trained with some special forces dudes in places, and the old time special forces dudes were using plain Kerlix gauze and ACE bandages, right? And they were using good tourniquets as soon as they had them. But I don't only want to push that you've got to have this high-end tactical medical equipment. What you need to have is a mindset to help and the knowledge of what to do, for massive hemorrhage in the first sort of 3 minutes, how to deal with their airway to make sure that they stay breathing within the first 4 minutes. And then if there's any holes in their chest area, how to deal with an open or tension pneumothorax within the first 10 minutes. And also, how to make a good 911 call. Because frankly, I'll bet almost nobody on this live stream or who's going to watch in the future ever practices making a 911 call. Now, if you go to TAC Response, that's part of the deal. I know that. But unless you train it, you probably don't know how. And I mean, we've all got cell phones around, and it's not like you can just randomly say, hey, Siri, dial. And I'm not going to say it just in case you have voice activation on your phone, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that's a skill set that you can practice so that in the most stressful time of your or somebody else's life, you can make an effective 911 call. And an effective 911 call is a really important piece of the puzzle because, one, it brings the right help to the right place, right? If your 911 call is just you screaming about something being wrong and you needed a fire engine to show up to get the jaws of life to extricate someone from a vehicle, but what you get is the police because you just were talking about how there was a car crash and a fight and all this stuff, then it's going to be another 4 to 6 minutes before we can get this person out. That's one. Two, we've got TAC Response alumni here who will understand about the 3 fights, and anyone who's done any training, right? So in any sort of fight, and gunfight or medical intervention or anything, there's 3 fights. There's the physical fight.
Yep.
Right? That's how you deal with the scenario or the situation. After that, there's the mental fight. That's how you process the trauma or the traumatic situation you had to go through and come out the other end. And the third fight is the legal fight.
Right.
And even though all the things that I teach are within the Good Samaritan doctrine or Good Samaritan law, depending where you're at, so they're all covered by that. That doesn't mean you're not going to get sued for trying to help somebody. It's not uncommon. And because we're talking about a 911 phone call right now, your calm, collected, effective 911 phone call is guaranteed to be a piece of evidence at your court case, no matter what kind of fight, no matter what kind of anything that you were into where there had to be a 911 phone call made, and where eventually you get sued. And so teaching the average civilian who wants to help but is scared of taking that first step, just starting, running over there and seeing what they can do, how to do that 911 piece, to give them that piece of that puzzle. If people only walk away knowing how to make a good 911 call to get the right help to the right place at the right time, then frankly, my course is worth it. But, I'm also going to teach all the other stuff. So it's really worth it.
So can you give us a quick example of what a proper 911 call would be?
Yeah. What's the scenario? Give me a scenario.
Yep. So I'm driving down I was going to say interstate, Trans-Canada, and I come across a vehicle flipped over, and there's somebody halfway in, halfway out, and they look like they're quite bloody.
Okay. And they look like they're what?
Bloody, bloodied up glass, All
right. So you've got some training. You go over there, and the first thing you're going to do is make sure that scene is safe for you. So the first thing you're going to do is make sure that car is not about to explode, right? Not about to get on fire while you're getting over there to try to help them. That's the first thing you need to do. Second thing you need to do is see if that's the type of bleeding that needs an immediate intervention, as in they're going to die if you don't put a tourniquet on. If it's not arterial bleeding, you have some time to do some things. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to try to find a way to get them out of that vehicle. Why out of that vehicle? Move them off the X. You've heard that term, move off the X. Okay. Right. Yes, you have. In a trauma situation, trauma, by definition, your casualty is going to need to be moved, right? You have to move them away from there because someone just got hurt there. It's dangerous, right? It was dangerous at one time. It might be dangerous again. So let's move them somewhere safe. On a highway, on the side of the road, a bloody vehicle. Yeah, I'd want to get them somewhere away from the other passengers and traffic coming by. Short side note, I responded to a vehicle crash in the middle of the mountains, in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter one time, on a corner. And we were there helping. And it was only because my truck was parked out far enough into the road that when the Super B tanker came around with molten sulfur and slammed on his brakes and jackknife because he was on the ice, it's only because his rear trailer hit my truck that it arrested his movement and it didn't run us all over.
Wow.
And this happened within seconds of me looking, trying to assess the scene that all happened. And so there's real life reasons why you want to move them away as quick as possible. So now we've just done the lead up to the scene. And the reason I did all that is because if you just get on your phone and dial 911 right away, you may not have all the information you need to give them. Now there's a case to be stated for quickly grabbing 911 and just starting to talk and walk, right? Going over there and be like, hey, listen, I'm here. Okay, this is who I am. There's a vehicle flipped over. I'm definitely going to need an ambulance and maybe a fire engine, and I'm going to go and start assessing the scene. If you're going to do that, you want to have your phone on speakerphone. You want to be able to place it somewhere where you can work and then move away. But then as you're dragging them out of the car, you need to take your phone with you if you want to keep, communicating what you're doing while you're doing it. If you did all these steps first and then move them away and then start working on them, making sure that you're getting them through this sort of trauma scenario, that's a great time to pull out your phone, get it on speakerphone, make sure that it connects. But I mean, as soon as a 911 call connects, okay, it's on. You can't turn it off. You can't end a 911 call. And so at that point, a good 911 call sounds like, hi, my name is Tim. I'm at this place. I'm responding to a vehicle accident. Okay. I have medical training. I've assessed the casualty. There's just one for arterial bleeding. And let's say I applied a tourniquet to the high and tight to the left arm. Okay. As far as I know, the bleeding stopped and I'm starting a patient assessment. I'm going to need an ambulance. We've moved them away from the vehicle. Okay. We're between the two lanes. The vehicle is a, blue minivan. You'll see it. It's on its side. People are stopping. There's a crowd gathering. I don't have any assistance. How long will it take for you to get the ambulance here?
Oh, okay. That last part I never thought about. So,
and remember, as you're working, you keep talking. People make a big deal about, oh, you didn't write the time on the tourniquet. Told me if I've got a phone call going into a 911 call center, guess what? They're recording the time.
Uh-huh.
right? I mean, I put a tourniquet on 30 seconds ago. Okay, cool. We've got that on UTC minus 30 seconds. Easy day. So we don't need to worry about that. There's the least number of sort of extraneous technicalities that we can worry about in those first couple minutes, the best. Because probably what's going to happen when Chuck or a person like him shows up is they're going to look at what you did. You put a tourniquet on, you packed their wound. They're going to say, hey, great job, hero. That's awesome. And then they're going to take their shears. They're going to cut off everything that you did, and they're going to do it properly.
Sure.
Or they're going to do it again because it's what they do. So what's our goal? To keep them alive, to get them to the next level of care. That's the goal. That's it. That's what trauma medicine from a civilian standpoint is about. And getting them to a medical evacuation. So that's a medical vehicle that takes them to a hospital. That's our goal. Keep them alive until we can get them there.
First step to the ambulance. And it's not that much different than what an ambulance does, except that the ambulance is taking them to a medical care facility, but their job is to keep them alive until they get to the hospital. Yes.
And the hospital's job is to keep them alive until they can walk out of the hospital.
That's right. Very good. Yeah.
It's the same step over and over, just in different time frames. And so there's different things that you worry about.
It's so funny how so much when teaching is done properly. So you talk about medical. TAC response talks about self-defense, winning the fight. Gunfights. I talk about home maintenance. But every bit of it has the same damn principles. Make it as simple, repeatable, and as stress-free as possible so that you can do it when all hell's breaking loose around you.
Yep. You're already going to be under duress by definition when it happens. The stress, the scenario will build the stress for you. You don't need to add any more stress to yourself. And you don't rise to the occasion. Default to the highest level of training you've mastered under stress.
That I want to say, I believe I heard that for the first time at Tactical Response. It may not have been, but I think so. And okay. So over the last couple of years, I've had a lot of veterans, ex-service guys on the show. And, and I always love to tell the story of Greg. I don't know if you know Greg. He runs the Apocalypse Preparedness School at Edmonton. Anyway, Greg Narecki, real cool dude. And anyway, so he come on and he used to go into minefields all the time. And, he went to Bosnia to, yeah. And I always would ask the guy, I'm like, how could you do it? I think I would be beside myself, and for him, it was nothing, that was just what he did. He was trained to do it. He enjoyed it. He got, he kind of got the kick out of it, but public speaking for him, he said was, kind of scared him a little bit shitless. Right. Whereas I don't mind that so much, but so it seems to have been, for whatever reason, the last year and a half, one of my journeys has been to know how to do things under stress, because in the modern Canadian life, unless you expose yourself intentionally to stressful things, you can be 41 years old and maybe not have done all of that, right?
Pretty damn comfortable lives we can live up here.
Yes, very much so.
Yes. High levels of comfort.
Yes, and comfort breeds complacency. And
comfort breeds complacency, and complacency is death.
Yes, but we don't. So, of course, I can't walk into a minefield because, I suppose I could, but it wouldn't be very, it would be hard to find around here.
It's not a great idea. No. Generally speaking.
That's what they say.
I would avoid that one.
But what I have learned, and I'm starting to internalize, and I appreciate you bringing it up, is the fact that we don't rise to the occasion. We drop to our highest level of training. So that means that there is something to be said for proper training in responding to stressful situations, because that's about all you can do, right?
Yes. So the more you expose yourself to stressful situations, probably the biggest benefit is the ability to keep a cool, clear head. And that in and of itself is a bit of a cliche, but what the ability to keep a cool, clear head looks like in the moment is the ability to, instead of hyper focusing on this thing, whatever the stressful situation is, the ability to take a step back take that second and look around, right? Like you can actually take a breath, look around,
Yes,
and make a plan. And the ability to just step a little bit and see what's going on will dramatically change your response to a stressful situation. And stress inoculation, whether it gives you that, like grants you that ability or not, it certainly enhances it in almost anybody who goes through that.
and it's not going to hurt. When I did 4 days at TAC Response, I did fighting pistol and fighting rifle back to back, and one of the things they teach you is proper evacuation. But when so if you're leaving a fight, you want to be looking around as you're leaving. And the first few times I do it, my head goes like this, but I don't see anything. I'm too busy moving my head around. But all of a sudden, after a bit, of course, they have their colorful language to use to explain to you why you should do it properly. And all of a sudden, I'm like, fuck, I'm actually seeing things. And I know that might sound stupid to some people, but that's a big step.
It sounds dumb to people who don't train under stress.
Right.
Like if you're hearing what he just said, you on the internet, and you're like, that's retarded. You don't have training. And right. I don't mean that in a mean way.
No.
I apologize on behalf of my people.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
I'm not shitting on you. But what that means is that you've never had it where if you didn't turn around and look, someone was liable to hit you in the head with a baseball bat. Or when you did what you consider to be training, it wasn't real enough to you to think that, hey, I'm doing this gunfight training and shitheads tend to attack in pairs or trios. They're like jackals. They come in teams. Yeah, and maybe. One of them will go in front to get your attention. And then bad boy number 2 and 3, where do you think they're coming from? They're not coming from in front of you. If that's not real for you, then what he's talking about, might sound silly. But as soon as that becomes real, however that comes across, you don't know what you don't know. Gary Johnson. As soon as that becomes real for you, then, gun up, looking all the way around and really looking like, hey, where am I going? Is there anybody back there? Do I have someone that I have to tell, like, listen, run back to that white car. We're going to group up there. If you just did this and this, you'd have no clue. You wouldn't be able to effectively communicate anything. All you were doing was range masturbation, if you'll excuse my colorful terms.
Oh,
right?
Hey, it's all free here.
There's a lot of that out there.
Yes, there is. And yeah. And that was the thing. Here's the other thing. I went to tactical response thinking I was going to learn how to shoot. Well, you couldn't be any fucking wronger. Oh my God, is that the right word? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I couldn't be any more wrong than that right there. They taught you how to win a fight and how to survive a fight. And everybody asked, what did you think?
It's a dramatic divergence from how to shoot.
Yes. And it's a dramatic divergence from almost, well, I wouldn't say almost, but the typical firearms training that most people supply.
Yep. Because when you go to a typical firearms place, you're either learning how to do what the military does, or you're learning how to competitively shoot. Those are your two sort of standard metrics. Winning a gunfight while not being a great shot is not a very popular concept. But if you look at statistically, civilians who win gunfights, statistically speaking, they aren't always great shots. They can't pull off the competition thing. They don't do that. They just had the right mindset, had the unlock codes all come off and said, I have to do this, or someone I care about, or someone, who shouldn't die is going to die, and I have to do this. And that's a different mindset.
What is it, 7 yards or 7 meters? Well, 7 yards anyway is the average.
7 yards, 21 feet.
Now, here's the thing. You could put a gun in almost anyone's hand who has almost no training whatsoever, and you could probably put a few shots on target at 7 yards, especially if you were, maybe fearing for your life a little bit. But yeah, that was the first thing that blew my mind was, oh, yeah, they're not going to teach me how to shoot tight groups, even though that's part of it. But they're going to teach you how to draw proper. They're going to teach you how to evade. They're going to teach you how to win the fucking fight. It was,
What's more important, shooting the bad guy or not getting shot?
No. There's a couple people.
Hold on. In the chat, what's more important? Shooting the bad guy or not getting shot?
We'll give them a minute. There's still, I'm sure there's still, well, we got a dozen people in here, and there's some people over on Telegram.
There's a bunch of alumni in this chat. I know what answer is going to come populate here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
It's
there we are. Gary Johnson. He wins.
So if you win your fight without putting a tight group into somebody's chest, did you still win the fight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you won the fight.
Yeah. If winning that fight looks like you didn't have to shoot somebody and live with that and spend all the lawyer fees and all that bullshit, did you win that fight?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you won the fight. I think
you won a bunch of fights.
Yeah, because there's a guy on TikTok once in a while I'll watch. He does self-defense, and the guy, he said, I forget what it was. He was like, "What's the simplest way to get out of a headlock?" And he's like, "Run the hell away."
Don't be in that headlock. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Leave. And that's the thing is a lot of this tactical training doesn't involve the civilian. Yeah. Move your fucking feet. The tactical training is like, oh, as we advance to the enemy and, contact front and reduce the threat. It's like, as a civilian, I have the option to just leave.
Yeah.
And for anyone here who hasn't had force on force training, okay, force on force training will teach you that in a hurry.
Yeah.
Now, for all Canadians who are listening, and lots of Americans and lots of people around the world, you don't really have the legal option to shoot them.
No, we certainly don't.
You don't. It's not, the self-defense this, and there's this little legal. No, it's not going to go your way. So, only do that if you're willing to spend 10, 20, 30 years in prison and not see your family. Now, after you think about that you won't see your kids for 30 years. You won't be at their prom. You won't be at their wedding. You won't do shit. Take your fantasy about how you're going to, shoot bad guys in the face and inject that. And then ask yourself, do I need to be in this situation? Could I just leave? And I'm not trying to shit on anybody. What I'm trying to do is illustrate that there's options available to you that aren't just, shoot. We see videos on the internet of police officers who go to their gun right away. They're like, go now. And it's the tactical community loves to criticize them. Like, well, that police officer didn't have any other tools because of their poor training. Don't be like them.
Right.
Training and no gun beats gun and no training, because Absolutely. The training gives you the situational awareness, gives you options. And that's why it's so important. And that's in a tactical context. That's in a medical context. That's in a preparedness context.
Yes.
Okay. And going to experts to learn how to do things. Bringing in experts to teach you things, to give you that fast track so that you can do more things, gives you more options. Doesn't matter what the situation is.
Gary Johnson says, everyone always assumes they're going to win the gunfight and be slapped on the back as a hero. I would suggest, and I could be wrong about this, but unless it's a very specific state in the U.S., you're still going to be at least questioned after a shooting. And possibly, I wouldn't necessarily say arrested, but you're gonna at least have some legal questions you have to answer.
I'd say this: Murphy's Law guarantees that you're going to get the emergency that you didn't prepare for. That's what Murphy's Law is about. So, even saying there are states where you can do this and it's fine. Yeah, but Murphy's Law dictates that you're going to be the one guy that it wasn't fine for.
Right. There's going to be something there that's going to, whatever it happens to be, that they're going to say, I think we got to look at this a little bit deeper.
Every time I go and spend, a week down in Camden, down in Tennessee, I walk around with a pistol on 24/7 because it's part of the culture. And, it's obviously I can't do that here. And
too.
Right. But everybody is walking around with a gun.
Yes.
And my personal observation and experience is that people are more polite.
I knew you were going to say that.
Considerate.
Yes.
People act more like what the world thinks Canadians are. Erroneously. Canadians are not this super that's just some bullshit propaganda. Sorry, rest of the world. Although I did just apologize there. But like Americans who are trained.
I knew you'd appreciate that.
Yeah. Americans who are trained in how to use firearms and have had the sort of the weight of the responsibility of what that means draped on their shoulders tend to be upstanding members of society.
The day 2 of tactical pistol, fighting pistol.
Yeah, I know.
Yep. And James, I couldn't believe when they said we had like I don't know, it was a 3 or 4, I forget what it is, but anyway, you sit down for the video and it's James, and it's anyway, and he talks about when you carry, you take on a burden of responsibility that means you can't go to stupid places with stupid people and do stupid things. You can't fight somebody simply because they piss you off, because you have a higher level of responsibility. And I think that goes to anyone, not just someone who chooses to carry.
I agree.
Because like you said, the fight that you win is the fight you didn't have to fight, right? We got a few
things. You win 100% of the fights that you don't get into.
Absolutely. I think that's a paraphrase of Wayne Gretzky, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, if it is, I'm going to give him full credit because I'm certain I didn't come up with that on the spot.
He always said you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So
yes, that's true.
And if you're an Office fan, did you ever watch The Office, the TV show? Michael Scott used to take credit for that.
Yeah,
so.
Yes, a little bit. I haven't owned a TV in 20 years.
Right.
Television is one of those things that will eat your time and your motivation and your desire to do just about anything.
This thing too.
Yeah, that's the other one. New TV.
And it's hard to. I mean, I don't know if you struggle with. Maybe you don't. But as a content creator, I am on my phone a lot. Whether it's responding to emails or chatting with the Telegram group or uploading my content, but it can be a really quick slide into just watch a couple of videos on TikTok and then heaven help us all.
I struggle. Like I put out, I think I put out 2 posts this morning, and they're just a photo, which was previously, I had already preloaded on my phone, and writing some words, and then doing the Instagram post and then the thing to the story. Each one of those posts, for some reason, took me 45 minutes for just a few little words. So, yeah, like for every one of those posts, I've probably got an hour of my day in, and hopefully that there's value that could be found in them. That means it's worthwhile, and I think there is, or I wouldn't be doing it. But you have the Telegram, and you have like other stuff on the internet going on. I don't have that so much. I mean, I've got my Signal chat with my alumni friends, which they can attest I'm not that big of a part of, because I'm always flittering about from doing this thing to this thing and then in transit. And where I'm at in northern BC, we still have large areas where there's no cell service. Like or the reception is 3G, right? And it's not 5G or 4G. Like I still, it's really easy for me to experience going somewhere where the cell phone doesn't work. That's normal for me. And a lot of the people that I'm interacting with on the internet, that's not normal, right? And so people will be like, hey, why weren't you immediately available to answer this thing? I was driving. And like after 4 or 5 of those, they're like, all right, we're just not going to include you anymore because you never show up until 3 hours later. Like, roger that. That's cool. I don't mind. But it's just part of the deal. And have I mentioned the low population density and the forests and the mountains and the moose? Like, it's nice up here.
There's nothing wrong with it. I miss trees. We have a couple here in Alberta, but not very many.
It is illegal to cut down a tree for firewood in your province, in many places in your province.
Yeah. I found out recently that each and every elm tree in my town is insured for $50,000. Think about that, folks.
It's like 295 American dollars.
That's true. Freedom units, as I like to call them. So.
Yeah, and so like, and people would find that crazy. Like, you can't cut down trees in Alberta. Yeah, it's pretty weird, but they don't have a lot of, like, to be fair, you don't have a lot of.
No,
And the trees,
no.
and the trees you do have are sort of up in the northern boreal forest, and they're not great big trees. They're alders and other stuff like that, and they're old. They look like they've been poisoned by the tundra and the muskeg, and they have a hard enough life. Like, we don't need to cut them down for firewood. They don't burn that well anyways.
So true. Yeah, I used to go up to. Have you ever been to Bonnyville or Wabasca? Yeah,
Pipeliner.
Yeah. Okay. So I worked on a co-rod rig for 2 years when I first came out here, and I enjoyed it. Hard work. I actually learned. I think that's where I found my work ethic, which is crazy. But anyway, I mean, I always did a lot of shit, but I really, anyway. So it was great. But we used to go up there and play around in the woods quite often.
Yep.
Well, we have been an hour and 15 minutes. This was great, Ed. I really appreciate it. Number one, I would love to have you back sometime. This was great. How do people find you?
If you want to follow what we're doing, the content we're creating, then Instagram is the place. I'm at the Iridium Group. I have a YouTube channel as well. It's the Iridium Group. And that's where you would go to sort of see the content that we're posting and get updates to what new things we have. If you want the training, if you want to sign up for training or like browse the web store, it's iridiumsolutions.ca. Iridium, like the element, IRIDIUM, solutions.ca. Like, I guess, like the satellites. I chose that because Iridium 192 was the radioactive isotope that I moved around this country the most frequently inside sealed source containers and dealt with radiation emergencies with and taught people how to deal with it when they come across it. So that's why Iridium. Those are the best places to find me. If you call me and leave me a voicemail, you probably will not get it returned. So if you want to get a hold of me, the best thing you can do is email info@iridiumsolutions.ca. The man from New Jersey, thank you for your wealth in knowledge. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming on and listening to a couple of Canucks ramble for over an hour.
I put your email address in the comments there. So
cool.
That'll be
awesome.
Yeah. No, that was great. Chuck says, thanks, Ed and Tim, for the great live stream. Ed is the man for training. I want to take training from him. He knows his shit forward and back.
I want to train with Chuck. So, I think at some point we have to make that happen. The Appalachian Mountains sound like a pretty cool place to go and check out. I hear that there's lots of alcohol out there.
I went to prepper camp in North Carolina, which is the Smoky Mountains, and I was availed of some apple pie moonshine, which was to die for. Are you a bourbon guy by chance?
Scotch.
Oh, I have a bottle of, I think it's 17-year-old Scotch over there. So,
made by who?
Glenn. Oh, crap. My wife bought it for me. I'm not a Scotch guy. I'm a bourbon guy. Glenn. Yeah. Anyway. So.
It's either Fiddick or Leave It.
Oh, that's it. Leave It. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, good stuff. Bourbon's too sweet for me.
Fair enough. I get and Scotch is a little too bitter for me. So
I like my coffee black and my Scotch strong, and
that's cool.
Anything to add to that?
That's all right. Well, thanks, Ed. This was fun. We like I said, love to have you back again. I know you work some crazy hours and some different times, but if you're up for it, come on back, man.
I'm absolutely up for it. Let's do it. And maybe we will spend a bit more time talking about actual preparedness. And I mean, we didn't get to do a lot of the other half of this interview where I wanted to ask you about a lot of the stuff about your workshop. And so I think we have more conversations to be had.
So for anybody still listening at this point, honestly, this was just an excuse for me to get Ed on here so we could talk, because I didn't think we'd make time to sit down and talk. And I knew the conversation would be worth sharing. So
good times. Well, thanks everybody else for showing up and for the good comments, and yeah, let's end this.
Perfect. If you want to hang for a second in the background, and I'll close this up here. Give me 1 sec. Well, guys, I hope you absolutely enjoyed that. I had been looking forward to. I had to reschedule once on Ed, and he lived up to absolutely everybody's high expectations. He was recommended to me from many people that I definitely respect their opinion. So, guys, thanks for dropping in. As always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.